Today we are joined by the New South Wales Planning Minister, the Honourable Rob Stokes. We are hosting the Minister in our Sydney office in conjunction with the Planning Reform series of events, which Allens is sponsoring for the Planning Institute of Australia here in New South Wales. Minister, thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much, Michael.
To kick off, what are the priorities on your agenda for this term as the Planning Minister?
Well, there's a lot, because there's a lot to do. Firstly, the key thing that we have to continually keep focused in mind is the need to promote and boost housing supply. We know that we're at historic highs in relation to supply of completed dwellings into the market, but we do know that there's been an historical shortage that we've got to play a lot of catch up for, and there's an underlying demand for around 50,000 homes per year. We're a long way from that still, but housing supply is a big part of that. But there's also a lot of reform tasks that need to be undertaken as part of that. Part of it's a focus now on e-planning, on the planning hub, on the electronic housing code, focus on apartment design quality, so the new SEP 65 has just come out. Also, I've got a real focus on boosting supply of other forms of more dense forms of housing like townhouses and terraces. Also very focused on legislative reforms, including legislation to set up the Greater Sydney Commission, legislation to remake the Coastal Protection Act, and of course the big one of all, the planning bill itself, and ensuring that the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act is ultimately completely overhauled in terms of new comprehensive legislation that's able to meet the demands of growing Sydney and New South Wales over the next generation, as the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act did for last generation.
Can I pick you up on that? You would have seen recently the Property Council of Australia released its Development Assessment Report Card of 2015, and New South Wales didn't fare too well, mainly because of the planning reforms that were on the table being derailed in 2013. Where does planning reform and a new planning act actually sit on your agenda?
Well, it is obviously absolutely crucial to delivering long-lasting reform to change the culture in relation to planning and to have a focus on outcomes and on delivery. But we do need to recognise the lessons of 2013, and I think in hindsight, I think perhaps the reform task was too speedy, if you like. When we look at what happened in the 1979 Act, that came into force in 1980, but the reform process started in 1972. So there was a long gestation period for that transformative reform to come to pass. Here we were trying to do that same activity within the space of 2 years, and it's very important to bring the community along with us, and certainly I think the politics of the time and the shape of the upper house in particular made that reform ultimately unsuccessful. We've got a different parliament now, and so a much easier parliament to work with, but nonetheless I think one of the lessons we drew from the failure of the planning bill was that we really do need to prove up to the community that the ambition is not to make Sydney worse, but to make it a better place and to provide improved opportunities for both participation, but participation with a purpose. Not participating for the hell of it, but participating in how do we shape Sydney, how do we manage its growth to get the best possible outcome. And so it's that conversation that we need to have to put up reforms that truly have the community's support.
In last month's state budget, you announced a few things. You announced funding to establish the Greater Sydney Commission, which you've already mentioned, and a new crack team in your department called the Priority Projects Branch. What outcomes are you hoping for the Commission and this new crack team to actually be achieving?
Sure. So the Commission, the Greater Sydney Commission, its real focus and its purpose is to have proper joined up thinking for all of Sydney, a proper focus on metropolitan governance that's really never existed in New South Wales. We've always had a very strong local government sector and some level of central control. But in terms of looking Sydney as a metropolitan entity, there's never been the capacity to do that planning in a proper collaboration with local councils. So instead of really Sydney being conceived as a single unit, there have been 43 local councils, all with their own objectives, which has led to very ad hoc and incremental decision making that hasn't been efficient and hasn't led to the best outcomes. By creating a forum where state and councils work together for shared objectives, we truly believe that we can transform this city for the better. So that's in relation to the Greater Sydney Commission. In relation to the crack teams, I can't show you their faces for obvious reasons, but the point with the crack team is it's all about one of the frustrations that proponents have said to government is that, well, it's great to have a focus on facilitating development, but we need the capacity within the department on some of these major projects to ensure that the capacity is there to deliver on them. And so that's what that's all about, to ensure that we've got absolutely the best people and the best skill set and skill mix in the department to get things happening. And there's a real justice implication to all of this, because Sydney is becoming an increasingly unaffordable place to live. That's a problem shared with other global cities, but one of the responses has to be to get as much product out to the marketplace as possible to deal with those affordability concerns.
There's been a lot of debate about the role of foreign investors in the housing market, particularly in Sydney. What is your view on the balance between encouraging that investment and the role that is perceived that it plays with increasing housing prices and affordability?
Well, we've seen that a former Premier of this state once declared that Sydney was full. And in so doing, we embarked on a decade of really stopping land release and of forcing all development to utilise existing infrastructure, even when that infrastructure wasn't there. So we ended up with congestion and poor planning outcomes because there was a declaration from the top that Sydney's full, we don't want you. Now, I think that's a really negative message, and we're bearing the legacies of that decision some 15 years ago by a former Premier. Instead, if Sydney truly aspires to be a global city, and that's certainly my aspiration for this city, then we have to accept what comes with being a global city, and that's international investment. And international investment is a good thing, and we should encourage it. And it's actually a sign of confidence in what's happening here. Sure, it brings with it challenges, but those challenges are not a reason to just have some sort of reactive, oh no, we can't have foreign investment. Foreign investment is a great thing, and it shows that this city is growing. It shows that there's confidence in what we're doing, and I anticipate that we're going to have increased investment, and that's only a good thing. And any message to the contrary would really, I think, be cutting off our nose to spite our face. If we aspire to be a provincial city, like an Adelaide, then by all means, then let's put some restrictions in place. But if we truly aspire to be a global city, internationalism is part of that.
So, drawing on that, what is the role of investors that you see in actually achieving the government's planned development, not just in Sydney, but around the state?
Yeah, of course. So we need to encourage investment. That's clear. If we want more homes and we want more jobs, we need more investors to pay for these things and to have that confidence to make things happen. But we also want to focus and encourage investors into the areas and into the industries and into the products that the market wants and that are in the public interest. We want investment that is good for people, that is in the public interest. One example of where we could look is in Europe. Institutional investors have historically been involved in providing affordable rental accommodation. In Australia, we don't have a history of that. We have institutional investors investing in retail and commercial developments, but not so much in rental accommodation or housing products. That's somewhere which perhaps a stream of investment could help support an affordability outcome for the general community. That's just one example, but we want to focus investment into the sorts of development we want to see to make people's lives better.
Minister, thank you so much for your contributions today and for joining us today here at Allens.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.